just to round off trust lending, I think it's kind of, if you've already got loans in a trust, I think you may benefit from that. But I think what you're going to see in the future is maybe some of the majors step away from it, or, they increase their rates. It gets a little bit more difficult to use this product. I don't think it's going to disappear completely. You can't just sort of, turn off the tap, because that has flow-on effects. But I
Mhm.
think maybe because it's a bit more risky, it might get phased out a little bit, and
Yeah.
and that's obviously going to have an impact on the market. I think, yeah, this DTI cap, I've worked at credit in a few major banks. 6 times debt to income ratio, it basically means if you're earning 100K, as the bank deems it, you shouldn't be having more than a 600K loan, right?
Right. Yeah.
If you look at the multiples required to buy a house today,
Mm.
I don't really know how that makes sense. I think a lot of this is targeted at slowing down some of the investor activities. You got
Mhm.
people racking up absurd numbers of properties, and they're trying to battle this now. So I guess this is part of de-risking.
Yeah.
What I can tell you is 6 times DTI cap, that was already a concept in most banks. They
Right.
already knew that once you go over 6 times, you're in a dangerous territory. I know certain banks, automatically kick it into a senior
Mm.
person has to look at this because it's high risk. You need mitigants for this. And really, the hard cap was 8 times. If you've got someone who's got 8 times DTI,
Mm.
the banks would just kind of automatically decline it in the residential space. So
Yeah.
I don't think it's anything new under the sun, this six
Mm.
times DTI cap. But I think if it does get mandated that you actually cannot give any lending above 6 times, that is going to have an impact as well, because this is going to tighten your availability of credit, right?
Yeah.
Now, I mean, what happens when things like this happen? You turn off one tap, you open up another tap, right? They added all these sort of, haircuts and shading for income. And then people thought, well, this is going to be, the tightening of the screws. We can't get any more debt. And then all of a sudden you have this arbitrage or this, trust lending thing you can do, which opens up the door. So
Mm.
I think whilst these things will come in and they will sort of tighten things, which is their purpose and which is actually required, you can't allow things to run rampant. I think as you progress through it, Australia's economy is highly linked to, property, right? And
Yeah.
we can't just stop that, or you have a massive effect on the broader economy. So what's going to happen is they're probably going to open up new pathways or new ways to continue, credit originations and making money. Because I think people forget the banks want to make money as well, right?
Right.
Not that we forget, but when you're going for a loan, the bank wants to do the loan as well because they make money. And it's not realistic to just tighten everything and shut it all down. So I
Mm.
think, yes, we are seeing a tightening in the credit, and that's typically the first sign, or an early indicator that there's more stress to come. I don't think this is like doom and gloom. I think, yes, there's going to be some tightening, and it is required because there's people sort of, taking lending at levels they shouldn't be doing it, like if
Mm.
I'm being very frank. And you need something to come in and counteract that. And that's what some of these changes will do. But as it's been historically with Australia, if you turn off one tap, you open up another. So credit will basically just move into another type of origination. It may
Yeah.
slow down. And as I said, if property prices start to correct or move downwards too much, it's a big problem. We
Yeah.
can't, again, too big to fail. So economic activity slows down, the government will have to maybe cut rates, or they'll have to do some fiscal stimulus. They'll have
Right.
to do something, right? Because people need houses, or people need to be able to live. We're in an affordability crisis, it's very difficult. And our economy is run, this is part of our bread and butter.